Tim, I think I'm gonna have to edit this out of the podcast because I think we need to suggest this to Agri-Tech. Coming up, we are giving our takeaways from World Agri-Tech that happened last month in San Francisco. The Modern Acre podcast explores the latest in business, investing, technology, and sustainability in agriculture, and we're your hosts, Tyler and Tim Nuss. If you'd like to dig deeper with the Modern Acre, you got to check out our membership community, the Modern Acre Co-op. We are this week going to be releasing the members call recording that we had last month, talking all about raising capital focused on investing in agriculture. So we hear from some operators, some first-time fund managers around how they're thinking about structuring a fund and how they're going to market, how they're talking to investors. We really get into all the details of this. So if you want to hear that conversation that we had as a community last month, it'll be airing on the Co-op premium feed this week. So be sure to sign up, subscribe. It's as cheap as $6.99 a month, or you can sign up for the annual plan or become a lifetime member. We have a ton of ways for you guys to get involved, be part of the Modern Acre Co-op, our membership community. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Pinion. In today's challenging ag environment, the success of a farm rises and falls based on making sound decisions. Pinion advisors recommend evaluating your farm data regularly to maximize profits and identify threats to your bottom line. If you don't have time or resources, Pinion can help. Farmers have entrusted Pinion with their businesses for 90 years. From ag-focused tax and accounting strategy, legacy planning, and FSA program guidance, to business management, land advisory, sustainability, and more. Explore your options at pinionglobal.com.
All right, Ty, let's kick this thing off. First off, I know you're a big solar eclipse guy. Are you recovered from yesterday? Fill us in on your day. How did you take in the eclipse?
It was a nothing burger, Tim. I'm tired. I'm tired of whatever it is. We had a hurricane or a tropical storm in Southern California a few months ago. Nothing burger. Okay. We have, solar eclipse. Everyone better prepare. It's going to be like totally dark. It's going to be this big deal. Everyone's so excited. Nothing burger. I'm tired of all of this. Like, these things aren't that big of a deal. I think everyone just needs to calm down, relax a little bit. Tim, to answer your question, I went outside, went on a little walk with my wife during, the peak hour, and nothing. Okay. Maybe if I had the goggles, I'd have a different experience, but I'm a little tired of all of the hype around this.
Yeah, I was a little unprepared, did not have the official goggles. I took my sunglasses outside, looked at the sun. It just looked like a really bright sun. It didn't do it for me either, Ty.
It was a little darker. Like, it was 20% darker outside. All right, moving on, Tim. Let's talk about World Agri-Tech. First off, big shout out to the team at World Agri-Tech. They were able to partner with us, give us media passes to attend. Tim, this is a great show. I didn't go last year. I was, I had to log in so I could look at some of the panels and do some of the networking stuff, but I had major FOMO. This is really the event of the year. Like, everywhere you look, we're seeing people we know, we're seeing CEOs of companies, we're seeing investors. It's a really high value event, and I had a great experience. I think it was really interesting to see how everyone is thinking about the space right now in ag tech. And so I had a ton of fun. What did you think of the event?
Yeah, and similar takeaways. I think the networking at Agri-Tech is one of the best things in my perspective. Obviously super good content. The team does a really good job of kind of layering in the panels, but really being able to meet with people in person once a year and kind of have this as the point to bring everyone together is always super fun, just connecting with people in our network. So really enjoyed that. We kind of mixed and matched our schedules a little bit. We attended a few of the sessions. We had a lot of meetings set up. We walked the expo hall. So we were a little bit all over the place. That's the one thing about this show is it's a challenge to take it all in. If you want to set up meetings, then it kind of takes away from panels. So it's a lot to take in a 2-day show.
No, especially I just did a single day trip. I flew in first thing, flew out late in the day. It was exhausting. And yeah, only having one day felt like that was even exacerbated, right? All right, Tim, let's get into our some takeaways from the show. I think we've got some funny, lighthearted ones, and we have some more serious, thoughtful ones. I'm going to get things kicked off, Tim, of just takeaways from the show in general, our conversations, the panel, the vibe, the energy of what was happening within ag tech, how people are thinking about it. So number one on my list, Tim, San Francisco was delightful.
Ooh, hot take.
So, talking about, people making a big deal about nothing. I moved away from the Bay Area 5 years ago, Tim, down to lovely, sunny San Diego. And I spent a lot of time in San Francisco. I lived in the South Bay. And, there's homeless, right? There's crime, like it's happening. It's a big city. But, since moving, there's been just this narrative happening within, venture capital, tech of, San Francisco going to hell is kind of like, right, like the common narrative. And, we'll see stuff on Twitter, right, of thieves going into, the local Walgreens and taking stuff, and, the homeless issue and everything. And I just want to say that stuff, there is an element of that being true, right? But like San Francisco has been largely knocked on over the past few years. And I was like, guess I have to go brave it in San Francisco. Ubering from the airport. Hopefully I don't have to, stray too far from the venue. Tim, me and you went on a casual afternoon stroll to get our early afternoon cold brew, as we do. And it was just delightful. The sun was out. It was beautiful. I was nearly tempted to ditch the rest of the show, go down to the water, and just have a lovely afternoon. I thought it was fantastic. Obviously, after hours, it gets dark and stuff happens. But San Francisco
might be back. I mean, my car didn't get broken into once. We just went on this pleasant stroll, got a blue bottle cold brew. Like it was a delightful week in the city.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back. Let me just say that. I'm not scared to go back. I'm ready. I'm ready to go back. Maybe catch a Giants game. I'd love to be back in the city soon. I thought it was great. So that was first takeaway.
Thanks for level setting on the venue, Ty. That was helpful. Ty, with such a big event, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of sponsors to get it done. World Agri-Tech has no shortage of sponsors. It was pretty crazy when you walk into some of the halls, just like there's a sponsor for everything. I think the highlight reel for sponsors for me is the Wi-Fi sponsor, because when you connect to Wi-Fi, you have to enter in the company's name and it redirects you to their website. That was pretty cool. Like, I think highest ROI to be a sponsor of this thing, do the Wi-Fi.
Good take. That is a fantastic take. If we, have some additional marketing budget for 2025, Tim, I think we need to make a play at the Wi-Fi sponsor for Agri-Tech. However, now that we've communicated this publicly, I'm sure Agri-Tech is just going to hike the rate up. Previously, you have Premier, Gold, Silver, and then, footnote the Wi-Fi sponsor. Next year, Wi-Fi sponsor is going to be number one, thanks to this podcast.
Flip it.
Yeah. So, but great take. And I think that's just a good take for marketing promotion in general, right? Like, what are the opportunities, right? You could be one of 50 on a screen that, how do you stand out? Or you could be this one differentiated sponsor that people actually have to write your name and they are going to look at your website and remember. So I think that's actually a funny but really wise take, Tim.
One more tag on take for you, Ty. Very good spread of the show. They had coffee flowing all day, but no cold brew. So I think another angle could be the cold brew sponsor next year. I think that would do well, especially in the afternoons.
Tim, I think I'm gonna have to edit this out of the podcast, because I think we need to suggest this to Agri-Tech and not have it be the most expensive sponsor. We got to find next year's Wi-Fi sponsor, and I think that's the cold brew sponsor. So this may or may not be edited out. Okay, so next takeaway for me, Tim, I was really interested to see just this dynamic at play that we're seeing within the industry, within tech, right, of a focus on profitability, valuations stabilizing and maybe coming back to reality, and how people were going to be like thinking about that as it relates to investing in ag tech. And this is a huge focus of opportunity. I think there was a panel kind of discussing this. We weren't able to attend that, but I saw, Tim, and you walk the halls of the exhibition hall, the startup hall, and there's so many ag tech companies focused in on a specific area. And my takeaway, Tim, is if you're one of these companies, if you're an ag tech company, I think that you really need to decide, am I a venture-backed company or should this be a bootstrapped business? I think that a lot of venture-backed ag tech should not have been venture-backed, right? It just the total addressable market is not realistic to have a venture return for that business. And in many cases, when you're venture-backed, it forces you into this narrow business model of growth at all costs. When you may have a great business, a great idea, a great product, but you need to grow profitably and sustainably versus trying to boil the ocean. So my takeaway is that I think every company really needs to think about this more and be more thoughtful about this. And for those that have raised venture capital and are clearly not going to get a venture return, you need to start having those honest conversations with what does an exit or a transition look like here? Because I think there's a lot of these companies that are just kind of like operating, Tim, that don't really have a clear exit. And I don't really have an answer to that other than I think it's an opportunity for maybe a investment firm to focus on this area of the market where, you know, there's these good businesses potentially, but they're not going to have a venture return. And the VC firm, they're prepared to write it off, but it could be actually a very good business at a reasonable valuation.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's a bit of a reckoning happening, and it's a challenge at a show like this where obviously you're trying to bring the venture community in and get a lot of excitement to keep money flowing into the system. But obviously, yeah, like to your point, a immediate focus on profitability and making sure these companies can actually sustain themselves. So it's interesting where there's all these aspirational ideas being thrown about kind of what's coming into the marketplace, but also the reality that some of these startups are facing where they need to hit milestones and they're not growing quick enough for their investor targets. Yeah, one of the panels that we were able to sit on was Vinod Khosla of Khosla Ventures and David Friedberg. David Friedberg just recently joined Ohala Genetics, one of his portfolio companies, as CEO, and they were kind of just having a fireside chat about the state of union in ag tech, and question was posed about like what challenges ag tech investors are facing in this climate that we were just talking about. And he said, exceptional founders will have no issue. And I thought that was great of like, there's up markets, there's down markets, but good ideas, good founders, they stand the test of time. So don't be too concerned about like what period we're in. If you have a good idea and you're an exceptional person, like you'll do well no matter what period we're in right now.
So good, right? Like, I think that's good level setting of, from the venture capitalist perspective, invest in the exceptional. Right. There are always going to be the exceptional founders, the exceptional ideas. And that's really the biggest area of opportunity for venture capital. I think it's sobering, right? Because venture capital firms that are focused on ag, you have this money to deploy. And right, this is one of the problems with the model is that if you have $100 million to deploy, you're in this situation where you almost need to deploy that capital. That almost incentivizes in some scenarios where you're investing in maybe sub-exceptional founders or ideas. And so I think having just a discipline, Tim, of focusing on those specific categories, those specific founders and ideas that can achieve that venture return is hugely critical. All right, Tim, so it's clear to me that every year, what is the hype, right? Like there's been blockchain, there's regenerative agriculture, there's indoor and vertical farming, which was discussed a lot, right? About the rationalization there. This year, I think the big one was on generative AI, right? Obviously, given the rise of OpenAI, ChatGPT, the other LLMs in the market, this potentially has a profound impact on agriculture. And so I think that was the big area of buzz and conversation. And, Tim, I think this is a really interesting space. When we first started playing around with ChatGPT, right? Like we were like, this is incredible potentially for agriculture, right? Because agriculture's one of its major challenges is that farmer to technology conversation and speaking the same language. And, if there's a world when we very early were like, hey, there's an opportunity in agronomy here, right? Because oftentimes farmers are getting information and data from their retailer, right? Their input provider or their, third party or in-house agronomist, right? And they're trying to take all these data inputs of soil quality and health, historical yields and performance, weather, the seed varieties, the application schedule, right? All these different things. And they're trying to figure out, hey, what product makes the most sense on this field? And so we've seen Norm with FBN and, others looking at this space. And so, Tim, very early on, we were thinking about, hey, this is a big opportunity. I think there's a few folks working on this, but I think this does have the potential to have a profound impact on agriculture. And you could see a lot of people are thinking in this direction. What's unclear to me, Tim, is who is going to win, who is going to get the value of this technology. Is it going to be an open AI? Is it going to be someone who builds on top of these platforms? Is it just going to be the underlying platforms that gain from this? Who is going to gain ultimately is a question I have. And, we talked with Mark from CNH about how they're thinking about it. And even from a just troubleshooting diagnosis perspective with their tractors, right, is like if a farmer can engage with an LLM chatbot and get the answer they need very quickly, as opposed to flipping through a 500-page manual, that's very simple, but a huge, improvement on the existing process. So a lot there, I think a lot of opportunity. I don't know where it's going to shake out in terms of, are these going to be standalone companies that can benefit from this? Are the large incumbents going to just take advantage of this? And who ultimately gets the value from this?
Yeah, there's so many applications, Ty. I think it's like as a retailer or a sales services business, being able to augment your sales process and create sales enablement tools with AI is super interesting, as well as providing like grower direct tools with agronomy and stuff that we talked about. Funny when you talk about the conversation with CNH and Mark, we have a tractor that's down right now. And so Dad is trying to troubleshoot this tractor. It's 30 years old. The manual doesn't exist. So we had to buy a manual online. It's 1,100 pages long. There was like one specific area you needed, but like, yeah, a tool like that where you could say like, this vintage John Deere tractor, hydraulic hoses, can you take me to the steps to basically like fix this problem? But like right now it's so manual of like ordering this guide online. I'm like printing it out at Staples. It's like all these different steps to get like very basic information that like AI could definitely help address. And lastly, I think it would also impact just how companies are being built. Like you talked about, kind of going back to more of a bootstrap model and not having to raise venture. Like AI is going to open up so many like remote engineering possibilities for companies to build faster and more efficiently with less people.
Yeah, that's exactly right, which I think is just going to be fascinating to see how it plays out in terms of companies leveraging third-party tools that are just now more efficient, right? And allows them to do their job better versus, an AI-specific ag tech company that has their own secret sauce. So I think it's going to be both for sure, of this idea of leveraging AI for your business or building your business around the AI technology.
Ty, we made our rounds. Really curious what your top fave is. I'll start. I think my favorite was the Guardian drone. They had a collaboration with Wilbur Ellis, which is a big ag retailer. And I think just really interesting, like we've talked about like drone applications for a while, just still seems like too far out of reach, where it's like you're having to buy this drone and like get your own pilot's license and FAA registration. But like having a retailer invest in this and being able to offer it as a service, I think is immensely valuable. And that's something that we could like actually use on our farm, where some of the stuff we look at, it's like, yeah, it's cool, but like doesn't really make sense for our operation. Like the drone spraying, I think could reduce some costs on our end, and being able to use it as a service is really important as well.
The most interesting thing I saw, Tim, was someone we've had on the podcast before, Tim Bucher from Agtonomy. Their booth was really interesting. We had a chance to kind of reconnect with Tim at the booth and just hear about their approach. And they're building their platform of autonomy on top of existing equipment platforms, right? So that they can layer on top of, a number of OEMs equipment and tractors to make them autonomous. And their approach really is, which I think makes a lot of sense. A single autonomous tractor is like cool, right? But if you can have multiple working in tandem on a single operation overnight, that's what becomes really interesting from an economics perspective. If you can have 5 of these autonomous tractors working in conjunction, that's labor savings and that's more efficient and fast operations. And I think that's really interesting. And I just really like how Autonomy is thinking about, we're going to partner. We're not going to completely disrupt the model and the ecosystem. And I think that was really compelling to me. If I had, some extra funds lying around, Tim, I think my investment would go in autonomy right now from what I saw at the show.
Well, Ty, this has been a lot of fun recapping Agri-Tech. We both had a great time. Really appreciate the team for hosting us in San Francisco, a delightful city.
A delightful city. Who knew? Well, guys, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. We'd love to connect with you all. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, wherever you listen. We're there. We appreciate you tuning in, and we will talk to you soon.